Show me your moves.
Hi guys, so a friend of mine got married recently and I decided to make something for him. The same friend also moved in his new apartment like some time ago, and I wanted to make a mortar and pestle for him. Here's the one I made. When I asked him whether he needed one, he said yes, because mine is full of cracks. And as you can see, the one I made is also full of character. So unfortunately this wouldn't do. So now I had to make something for his wedding. So I decided to go for axes. To be honest, just because I like to make axes. I thought they were cool. I made up a shitty reason on the spot when some old lady asked me at the wedding. But the real reason is I like axes. Axes are cool. And yeah.
Anyway, I got 4 cookies from part of the Bert van Tjerk. 2 of those cookies I used for the axes. Onto the axe blades. I got the rough shape by drilling holes around the contours that I drew on these wood cookies. And next I just chiseled away the other parts. This actually took a shit ton of time, so I was kind of hating myself at this point in the process, and we've only just started. After some time, I could remove the unnecessary material to create the rough shape of the axe head. Next, I had to fashion a hole for the handle to go into. I had no real way of doing this, so I just started with an outline and started drilling, chiseling, sanding, whatever would work. I bought the axe handles because I don't trust myself on my handle making skills or my handle wood picking skills, so it was nice to have some security on part of the axe.
Alright, so now I have my 2 a bit nicer outlined. Chiseling this sucks, because I'm chiseling what's the English word for this? Oh, straight onto the grain? No, not with the grain, across the grain. And the chisel works nicely along the grain. So just to reiterate, so the tree goes up like this, so the grain also goes up like this. And that's why I can chisel these parts fairly nicely. But if I want to chisel this, so across the grain is going this way now because I turned the axe head. If I want to chisel this, I'm gonna hate my life. So I think what I'm gonna do is try to get as far as possible with the drill and use the Dremel maybe. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
After another shit ton of time, disaster struck. The axe head broke in 2. It's not that surprising, as the wood was quite rotten. It still sucked though. I glued the pieces together and hoped it would do the trick, and thankfully the glue held up, even as I continued chiseling and drilling. Finally, I'd prepared the hole enough so I could manage to get my stick into it.
The next day.
This is the progress on the axis. I managed to fit the X handle into the X head. So all that is left to do now is shape the X head like an X, so it should have an edge. And I'll clean up the edges a little. Not too much, because I think when you go for an obsidian look, the edges are always a bit rougher. So yeah, it gives me some freedom because it doesn't have to be that clean. So I'm gonna use the angle grinder for it to take all the material off. Hopefully it doesn't take that long, because this one, well, has the least material that needs to be taken off, but still quite a lot. This bigger one needs a bit more. But well, the wood is rotten, so maybe that helps in the taking the material off process. So the idea is that they will look like, or they will put up like this on the wall. Hopefully pretty cool.
Onto the shaping of the X blades. I had a problem. The X heads were quite light and I don't have a table clamp to put them in. So I improvised. I came up with a rinky-dink solution of using my glue clamps to add some extra weight, and so I could actually stand on the glue clamp to make sure that the wood would not shoot off into the distance. It worked. It wasn't great for my back, but it worked. One of the wood cookies was a bit thicker than the other one, and now is the time to correct for this thickness, so I had to remove some extra material from one of these. At the top of the X blades, some chunks of wood had gone off, causing some imperfection. I'm not a perfectionist, but unfortunately for them, they kinda are. My original plan for the axes was to shape them a bit differently. I had an obsidian axe in mind. For this obsidian axe, I would have to shape the axe head quite differently. I would have to shape it more scaly and paint it black and then epoxy over to give it that glassy final look. When I saw the patterns on the smooth axe heads, I thought it looked quite awesome. So I decided to use a test piece to see what it looks like when it was finished. Well, it looked quite cool, so I just decided to proceed with this smooth axe head look.
So guys, I know I said I wanted to make these axes into obsidian axes, but after grinding these axes down into shape, I really like this pattern, and I think it would be a waste to paint it black. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna coat them with some polyurethane, and that should pop the color quite a bit. And if I don't like it, I can always sand it down and paint it black anyway. But first, just to be sure, I'm gonna use the polyurethane on a test piece, which is of the same wood, which is also rotten, which should have the same pattern. So yeah, I can be sure that will look nice.
A problem I often have with gifts is that the gifts are actually quite awkward to give, as as they are. Like my beer bottle and glass, then the earrings. It's a bit awkward to just hand them the object. So for the beer bottle, I made a small charcuterie board, and for the earrings, I made a little ugly stand, just for gift giving purposes. The same principle applies here. So I made a backboard with protruding arms to hold the axes, and so they can mount the axes on the wall.
The next day.
Alright, time to start talking about the next part of the build. So you have the handle of the axe here, and I thought it would be cool if I wrap the lower part of the handle, where you hold it, in leather. So here's some leather which I bought. These are some scraps, and this is tuigageleer. I guess it's used for the stuff you put around the head of horses. I don't know the English word. Tuggage, maybe? That's just tuigage in pronounced in the English way, I guess. But my plan is to wrap this around the handle, and I don't know how they normally stitch the leather parts together. I don't know if they do it with other leather. That's my plan. But yeah, I can imagine that will change. I will probably just watch one YouTube video and decide that that's the best thing to do. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
In my first design, I thought it would be cool to make a leather grip. I plan to make this by braiding leather strips. I'd never worked with leather before, and I'm not your braiding champion. I do love braids though. Anyway, after quite a bit of practice and trying out other positions, I decided on braiding the part directly underneath the blade. More on that later. First, let's see how the axe heads look with some finish. I used about 5 coats of polyurethane and I sanded in between those coats. After that, I epoxied the handles and the X plate together.
Alright, so I forgot to film the process of epoxying, but I did epoxy the wooden handles into the X heads. So these are quite attached now, which is good. Only one problem is that this piece that I used for flattening the X head got stuck as well, and it's quite stuck. So I guess the X head is quite stuck to the handle as well, which is good, but I will need to remove this. Then I gave a coat of tung oil mixed with turpentine oil to this piece, which makes it look a lot nicer than the last time I just used lacquer.
Everything went quite smooth actually, apart from a piece of wood also being epoxied to the X head. But after prying it off and a bit of sanding, another coat of polyurethane, it looked quite well again. There were also a couple of epoxy droplets showing, but either sanding or chiseling worked well enough to remove those as well. You'll see the results later. Now, let's get back to the braids.
The next day.
Alright guys, welcome to Charming View again. So, I actually finished both X's already, but I didn't like the finished braid on this one, so I'm gonna redo it. I'm leaving this wounded rope the way it is, so I'll just do the X's or the braids again, and then I'll need to wind the rope on this part still. Yeah, I like the way the other braid for the other X has turned out, but I wasn't quite satisfied with this. I think it would be a shame to say ruin or have the final product not as good as it could be, just because I didn't feel like braiding. And it's like the braiding itself is about 10 minutes and the wrapping with the rope is about 10 minutes, less probably. So I'm just gonna redo it. Yeah. So enjoy the show. So now, over this one, under this one, over this one, and I'm gonna grab a pair of thongs. What's it called? Not really thongs. Tongue. Also not tweezers. Yeah, I'm gonna grab something with which I can grab the leather strands a little bit better. I'll pull them tight and then I'll wrap the ends with waxed rope.
Next, when I was looking at the axes, I thought obviously that they were quite awesome, but they missed a personal touch. Thus, I engraved their names in the Viking alphabet into the handle. How cute.
So I decided to weigh these axes. This is axe number 1. Let's see what the difference between these axes is. Axe number 2. So this just ticked over to 891, the other was 883. So only 8 grams of difference between these axes. And that considering I did all the carving on the fly, and removing the material for the hole. Well, it just took off about the same amount of material, I guess. So that's good. That's nice. Again. Right, so here's the finished product. So as you can see, I added these, well, axe holders, these sticks, to the backboard. In such a way that if I position the axes like this, they will stay like this. So it's balanced about this stick. Yeah, I engraved their names. And I used a needle with paint to fill the voids. So that's Miriam, and that's upside down Maurice. Yeah, I put a nice size of the braids on the front. Yeah, I think it looks nice. I think the axes are quite well balanced, at least they haven't fallen off in the past 3 days since it's been like this. So that's it.